The ultimate betrayal, how I outsmarted my cheating wife and left her with nothing. They say betrayal comes in whispers in small moments that don't make sense until the full picture is revealed. For me, it came on an ordinary evening wrapped in the most casual confession I had ever heard. I've been seeing someone else. She said it like she was telling me she bought a new dress, no hesitation, no guilt, just a smirk that told me she had already made up her mind about how this would play out. She expected outrage, maybe heartbreak. What she didn't expect was my silence. I stared at her, processing the words, waiting for an explanation, an apology, anything that showed she still had an ounce of decency. But instead, she laughed, swirling the wine in her glass like this was just another Tuesday night. Oh, come on. You must have suspected. Had I? Maybe. There were signs, the late nights, the sudden disinterest, the way she kept her phone glued to her hand. But knowing something in the back of your mind and hearing it spoken aloud are two very different things. I leaned back, studying her, my voice calm. And you're telling me this because? She shrugged. Because I don't see the point in lying anymore. Her confidence was staggering. She truly believed she had nothing to lose. That's when she leaned in, a smirk still dancing on her lips, and delivered the real gut punch. You're not going to leave me. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A declaration. She truly believed that no matter what she did, I would stay. That I would keep paying for everything, keep playing the role of the devoted husband while she enjoyed her freedom. And the worst part? She wasn't worried about being wrong. Let's be real, she continued, sipping her wine. Even if you did leave, you'd still be paying me. Divorce courts love women like me. She grinned. She actually grinned like she had already won. That was the moment everything changed. I should have yelled, thrown accusations, demanded answers. I should have flipped the table, shattered the illusion she had built. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded. It was subtle, but it was enough to wipe the smirk off her face. She expected anger, heartbreak, anything but acceptance. I get it, I said, my voice even. I won't fight you on this. For the first time that night, she looked genuinely surprised. But only for a moment. Then her grin widened. See? I knew you'd be reasonable about this. I stood up, grabbing my plate like we had just finished discussing what to watch on TV. I rinsed it off in the sink, keeping my movements slow, controlled. If you're happy, that's what matters, I said over my shoulder. She sighed, relieved. She actually believed she had dodged a bullet. What she didn't know was that the bullet was still coming. And when it hit, it would destroy everything she thought she had. From that moment on, I played my role perfectly. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't question her late nights. In fact, I encouraged them. You should stay over at his place sometime, I suggested one evening as she got ready to leave. Give yourself space to figure things out. She gave me a long look like she wasn't sure if I was serious. Then she smirked. Wow, you really are taking this well. I just nodded, keeping my expression neutral. She thought I was weak. She thought I was just being pathetically understanding. But in reality, I was pushing her further and further away. She just didn't know it yet. The days that followed felt like a carefully rehearsed performance. I played my part flawlessly, never giving her a reason to suspect that I was anything but the defeated husband she expected me to be. She carried on as if nothing had changed, walking around with that self-satisfied smirk, believing she had complete control over the situation. She came and went as she pleased, barely offering an excuse anymore. I never asked, never questioned. Instead, I encouraged it. You should take a weekend trip with him, I suggested one evening as she packed an overnight bag, stuffing in clothes like she had no plans of ever coming back. She paused, glancing at me as if trying to gauge whether I was serious. You really don't care, do you? I shrugged. I just want you to be happy. That was the moment I knew she had completely bought into the illusion. She had convinced herself that I was weak, that I was some pathetic man who had resigned himself to the inevitable. What she didn't realize was that I was slowly, methodically pushing her toward a future she would never recover from. Every suggestion, every seemingly understanding word was a step closer to ensuring she wouldn't have a safety net when everything collapsed. I subtly nudged her toward taking more financial responsibility, presenting it as a way to feel independent. You've been talking about wanting to be more in control of your finances, I mentioned casually over dinner one night. Why not start handling the bills? She raised an eyebrow. You'd actually let me do that? Of course. You've always been great with money, I lied. It didn't take much convincing. She liked the idea of being in control, of holding something over me. Within weeks, she had taken over all the major household expenses. I made it seem like an act of trust, a way to show that I still respected her decisions despite everything. She ate it up, unaware that she was digging herself into a hole she wouldn't be able to climb out of. At the same time, I started making strategic moves. I adjusted my income, took a step back at work, and made sure that on paper I looked like a man barely scraping by. I consulted with a lawyer, laying the groundwork for what was to come. Every financial move I made was calculated, every document signed with a purpose. By the time I was finished, I wasn't the high-earning provider she thought she would bleed dry. I was just another husband who had fallen on hard times, while she, thanks to her new, independent lifestyle, was now the primary financial contributor in our household. She had no idea what was coming. One night, as she was getting ready to leave again, I leaned against the doorway and watched her apply lipstick in the mirror. "You know," I said, my voice casual, "maybe it's time you got your own place." She paused, her hand hovering just above her lips. "What?" I shrugged. "I mean, you're already spending most of your time at his place. Wouldn't it be easier to just move in with him?" Her eyes flickered with something hesitation, maybe doubt. I knew she wasn't sure if he would actually want her there permanently. But her pride wouldn't let her admit that. "Maybe," she said slowly, turning to look at me. "You're really okay with this?" I smiled, keeping my expression neutral. "I just want you to have what you want." That was all it took. The seed had been planted. Over the next few weeks, I subtly reinforced the idea, dropping hints, making it seem like a logical next step. If you moved in with him, you wouldn't have to split your time between two places. You could finally have your own space without feeling guilty. You deserve to be somewhere that makes you happy. It wasn't long before she started considering it seriously. The moment she brought it up to me, I knew I had one. "I think I'm going to start staying at his place more," she said one night as she packed a suitcase. "Just to see how it feels." I nodded, hiding my satisfaction. "That makes sense." She took that as my approval. She still thought she was in control, that she was calling the shots. She had no idea that I had been steering her toward this moment from the very beginning. And then, just as she started settling into her new life, I made my final move. She had been gone for a week when I filed the divorce papers. She didn't even notice. She was too busy playing house with her new man, believing she had left me behind without a second thought. What she didn't realize was that I had been preparing for this moment for months. I transferred the last bit of debt into her name. I made sure the bills she had so proudly taken over were solely her responsibility. I finalized every financial loophole that ensured she would walk away with nothing. Then I changed the locks. The day she returned, suitcase in hand, expecting to waltz back in like she still owned the place, she found herself standing outside with nowhere to go. She tried her key once. Twice. A third time. Nothing. She knocked, then banged on the door. "Babe, what's going on? Let me in." I took my time. I let her wait, let the uncertainty settle in. And when I finally opened the door, I stood there with my arms crossed, completely calm. Behind me, her neatly packed bags sat waiting, along with an envelope containing everything she never saw coming. Her eyes darted between me and the suitcase. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp with irritation. I stepped aside, gesturing toward her things. "You don't live here anymore." She blinked, caught completely off guard. "What are you talking about? We haven't even started the divorce yet." I picked up the envelope and handed it to her. "Actually, we have." She ripped it open, her eyes scanning the first few lines. The color drained from her face. You already filed?" Her voice wavered, the first cracks of panic appearing. 2 weeks ago." She staggered back, gripping the papers, flipping through them like they might suddenly change if she just looked hard enough. And then she found the section that destroyed her last illusion of control. Her eyes went wide. "Wait, why is my name listed as the primary financial provider?" I leaned against the doorframe, watching the realization hit her like a freight train. "Because you are." Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning every line with growing desperation. I could see the exact moment she realized the full extent of what had happened. Her breath hitched, her lips parted slightly, and then, as if the weight of reality had just slammed into her, she staggered backward, gripping the doorframe for support. She started, her voice barely above a whisper. "You did this on purpose." I crossed my arms, tilting my head slightly as I studied her. "I just made some smart financial decisions." Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, filled with disbelief and panic. "You said you were struggling. You said you needed me to take over the bills." I shrugged. "And you were so eager to take control. I just let you." She shook her head violently, gripping the papers so tightly they crumpled in her hands. No. This isn't right." She flipped to the mortgage section, her face draining of color. "Why is the house in my name?" "Better interest rate," I reminded her. "You signed for it, remember?" Her knees nearly buckled. "But that means," she stopped mid-sentence, her lips trembling as the truth settled in. "That means I'm responsible for it." I nodded. "That's right. The shock in her expression was quickly replaced by something else. Rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. Her fingers curled into fists, the divorce papers crumpling in her grip. "You think this is funny?" she hissed. "You think you can just trick me out of everything and walk away?" I let out a short chuckle, shaking my head. "No, I think you tricked yourself. I just helped you believe what you already wanted to." She let out a sharp breath, her nostrils flaring. "This isn't over," she spat. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll fight this." I gestured to the papers still clutched in her hands. "Go ahead. Read them carefully. You'll find that everything is airtight. You were the one in control of our finances. You were the one who willingly moved out. And now you're the one left with all the responsibility." She frantically flipped through the pages again, as if desperately searching for some loophole, some way to undo what had already been sealed. But it was all there in black and white. Her name on every major financial document. Her signature on every dotted line. Her decisions leading to every consequence. And then, just when I thought she might explode, her phone rang. She glanced down at the screen. The color drained even further from her face. It was him. "Go ahead," I said, smirking. "You might want to answer that." Her fingers hovered over the screen. For the first time in a long time, she hesitated. She knew exactly what this call was about. She wasn't stupid. She had spent months planning to start a new life with him, thinking she had me trapped while she secured herself a comfortable exit. But now she was the one trapped and I was the one walking away unscathed. I watched as she pressed her lips together, gripping the phone like it was a ticking time bomb. Her fingers finally moved, answering the call. The moment she put it to her ear, I could hear his voice, sharp and agitated even from where I stood. "You told me you had everything under control," he snapped. "What the hell is this? Your credit cards are maxed out, your name is on the mortgage, what have you done?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "You didn't tell me you were in this much debt," he continued. "I can't handle this, not on top of everything else. You were supposed to be set up for life after the divorce, not drowning in financial ruin." Her lips trembled, her throat bobbing as she swallowed hard. I thought I was," she whispered. "You thought." His voice was laced with disbelief and fury. "Are you kidding me? This wasn't the plan. I'm not your bailout." I leaned against the doorframe, watching the life drain from her expression as she realized, in real time, that the man she had thrown everything away for was already looking for an exit. "Look," his voice softened slightly, but it was filled with exhaustion, not sympathy. "I can't do this. I have my own problems. I can't take care of you." Her face twisted in pain. "But you said—" "I know what I said," he cut her off. "And that was before I knew you were financially drowning. I can't be part of this." Tears welled in her eyes as her last safety net disintegrated right in front of her. "Please, don't do this." There was a heavy silence on the other end, and then he exhaled sharply. "I'm sorry. I have to go." The call ended. She stood there, frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear as if willing it to reconnect. But it didn't. He was gone. Slowly, she lowered the phone, her fingers shaking as the reality of her situation fully settled in. No lover. No financial support. No home. No future. I watched her crumble, her legs giving out as she stumbled back against the doorframe. She looked up at me, her face twisted in shock, anger, and desperation. "You did this to me," she whispered. I met her gaze, completely unbothered. "No," I said calmly. "You did this to yourself." Her breathing became uneven, her shoulders rising and falling rapidly. "You ruined my life." I sighed, pushing off the doorframe. "No. I just stopped letting you ruin mine." I gestured toward the sidewalk where the moving truck I had arranged was now pulling up. "Your ride is here. You should get going." Her eyes widened in horror as she followed my gaze. Her suitcase. The packed boxes. The reality that she had nowhere else to go. You can't do this," she stammered. "Oh, I can," I said, stepping back inside. "And I already have." I didn't wait for her response. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me gloat. I simply closed the door. She stood on the other side, pounding on it, screaming my name. But I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. And she? She was finally facing the consequences of her own choices. The pounding on the door didn't last long. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe less. At first, it was furious, fists slamming, nails scratching, her voice filled with rage, desperation, disbelief. She screamed my name, cursed me, demanded I open up. But I didn't. I simply stood there waiting, letting her exhaust herself. Letting her realize that, for the first time since this whole thing began, she had no control. Then the knocking slowed. The yelling faded. It became softer, almost pleading. "Please, just talk to me. We can figure this out." No, we couldn't. There was nothing left to figure out. She had spent months, years, believing she had me backed into a corner, believing I would always be the one paying the price for her choices. But now she was the one with her back against the wall, and I was the one walking away. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. And then finally there was silence. I waited a little longer, listening, making sure she was really gone. Then I walked to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to see. She was still standing there, her shoulders slumped, her fingers gripping the divorce papers like they were the last thing tethering her to reality. She stared blankly at the moving truck, her packed bags sitting next to it as if still trying to process how everything had gone so wrong. Then she pulled out her phone. I could guess exactly what she was doing. Calling him again. The man she thought would be her escape plan. I watched as she put the phone to her ear, her expression filled with the last traces of hope. But after a few seconds, her face changed. Confusion. Then frustration. Then pure devastation. He had blocked her. Her arm dropped to her side, the phone slipping from her fingers. She stood there, motionless, as the weight of it all came crashing down. She had nothing. No home. No money. No man waiting to catch her. I should have felt guilty watching her fall apart. A part of me thought I might, that some last remnant of love or care would creep in and make me second-guess everything. But I didn't feel a thing. I stepped away from the window and sat down on my couch, letting out a slow breath. It was over. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt at peace. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more feeling like a fool in my own home. Just silence. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of the moving truck door sliding shut. The engine rumbled to life. Then finally it pulled away. I didn't watch it leave. I didn't care where she went. That was her problem now. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. Everything was exactly as I had planned. No shared accounts. No debts in my name. No financial chains tying me to her. I had played the game carefully, methodically, and now I was walking away with everything intact. She had walked into this thinking she would take half of everything I built. Instead, she left with nothing but regret. And as for me, I was finally free. The next few days were eerily quiet. No calls. No texts. No emails. I expected some last desperate attempt, maybe a threat, maybe a plea, but nothing came. It was as if she had disappeared. And then, a week later, my lawyer called. She's contesting the divorce, he said. I almost laughed. On what grounds? He sighed. She's claiming she was manipulated into financial ruin. That she didn't fully understand the extent of what she was signing. I let out a short chuckle, shaking my head. And my lawyer continued, she doesn't have a case. Every document is signed, notarized, legally binding. She willingly took on financial responsibilities. She willingly moved out. And since she earns more than you, she has no claim to alimony. So what does she want? A settlement. She wants you to pay her off to avoid dragging this into court. Now I did laugh. She's insane if she thinks I'm giving her a dime. That's what I told her attorney, he said. And judging by how quickly they backed off, I don't think she has the resources to fight this. Of course, she didn't. She had spent everything believing she would get it back tenfold in the divorce. But there was nothing left for her to take. A few days later, the official paperwork came through. The divorce was finalized. No alimony. No financial obligations. Nothing. And just like that, she was out of my life. For months after, I didn't hear anything about her. I moved on, focusing on rebuilding what she had tried to destroy. I took back control of my life, my finances, my peace of mind. Then, one night, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I just wanted to talk. I miss you. Maybe we could meet up. I stared at the message for a long moment. I knew exactly who it was. She had lost everything, and now she was trying to crawl back, hoping to find some way to undo what she had done. I smirked, shaking my head. I didn't even respond. I just blocked the number and went back to living my life. She had spent so long thinking she was in control. But in the end, she was the one left with nothing. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. No more mind games, no more silent battles in my own home. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long was finally gone. My life was mine again. And as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I barely thought about her. But life has a way of making sure loose ends never stay that way for long. One evening, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I already knew who it was. I debated ignoring it like I had the last few attempts, but something inside me, curiosity, maybe made me answer. Hello? There was silence on the other end for a moment, then a hesitant breath. It's me. I almost hung up right then, but instead I let the silence stretch between us, waiting for her to speak first. Can we talk? She finally asked. I leaned against my car, exhaling slowly. About what? She hesitated. I just wanted to see how you were doing. A short, humorless laugh escaped me. You want to know how I'm doing? Please, she said, her voice softer now. Can we just meet up? Why? I asked flatly. So you can tell me you made a mistake? So you can try to convince me to take you back? Her breath hitched slightly. No, you did this to yourself, I cut in, my voice steady. You thought you were setting yourself up for a perfect future, and instead you lost everything. And now what? Your backup plan fell through and suddenly I'm worth talking to again. It's not like that, she insisted, but I could hear the desperation in her tone. Then what is it like? I asked. Silence. I shook my head, pushing off my car. You walked away from everything. You made your choice. And now you have to live with it. Just like I had to. Please, she whispered, and for the first time I thought I heard something real in her voice. Not arrogance, not manipulation, just regret. But regret didn't change anything. I'm done, I said simply. We have nothing left to talk about. And with that I hung up. I thought that would be the last time she reached out. I thought finally she would get the message. But I should have known better. A few days later I got a call from my lawyer. You're not going to believe this, he said. Try me. She's claiming emotional distress. I almost dropped my coffee. What? She's trying to sue for damages, claiming you intentionally set her up for financial ruin. I burst out laughing. You're joking. I wish I was, my lawyer said, sighing. But don't worry. She has no case. Everything was done legally and there's no evidence that you coerced her into anything. She made all those decisions herself. Yeah, but that's never stopped her from trying to manipulate the truth, I muttered. Even so, she's wasting her time. This won't hold up in court and she doesn't have the money to fight this. I rubbed my temple, shaking my head. So what's the play here? She just hoping I'll throw money at her to make her go away? Most likely. I let out a slow breath, the amusement fading. Let her try. I'm not giving her a damn cent. That's what I figured. I'll handle it. And just like that she had sunk to a new low. She had no power left, no leverage, nothing to threaten me with, so now she was trying to play the victim. But it didn't matter. The court saw through it immediately. The case was dismissed before it even started. That should have been the end of it. But she wasn't done yet. A few weeks later, a mutual friend reached out. You're not gonna believe what she's telling people. I sighed. Let me guess. I was abusive? Controlling? She's claiming you cheated on her first. That she was the victim the whole time. I shook my head, not even surprised. Of course she is. She's telling anyone who'll listen. Some people believe her. Do you? I asked. The friend snorted. Not for a second. We all saw how she acted. But she's desperate. She has nothing left, so now she's trying to rewrite the story. I leaned back in my chair, processing. Did I care? Not really. The people who mattered knew the truth. Let her spin whatever narrative made her feel better, it wouldn't change anything. But apparently, the universe wasn't done with its sense of irony. One night, months after everything had settled, I was out with some friends at a bar. Laughing, enjoying myself, feeling lighter than I had in years. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. She looked different. Not in the way that time naturally changes people, but in the way that life had chewed her up and spit her out. Her hair wasn't as perfectly styled as it used to be. Her clothes weren't designer anymore. There was a weight in her posture, a kind of exhaustion that went deeper than just being tired. She hadn't seen me yet, and for a moment I considered just walking away, pretending I hadn't noticed. But then her eyes lifted, and suddenly we were staring at each other across the room. Her expression shifted. Shock. Then something else. Embarrassment? Regret? Hope? She hesitated, then before I could look away, she started walking toward me. I sighed, setting down my drink. Here we go. Hey, she said softly when she reached me. I nodded once. Hey. She bit her lip, glancing at my friends. Can we talk? I studied her for a moment. I don't think we have anything left to say. Her face flickered with something hurt, maybe? But then she tried to smile. Just for a minute? I exhaled slowly, then nodded. Fine. 1 minute. She swallowed, looking down for a second before meeting my eyes again. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow. For what? Her throat bobbed. For everything. For what I did. For how I treated you. For how I thought I could just take advantage of you and walk away. I didn't respond. She inhaled shakily. I was wrong. About everything. And I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I regret it. All of it. For the first time since this all started, she looked truly defeated. Not angry, not bitter, not scheming, just lost. I let the silence stretch between us before finally speaking. I appreciate the apology, I said evenly. But it doesn't change anything. She nodded, looking down. I know. I watched her for a moment, then asked, why now? She let out a humorless laugh. Because I lost everything. And when you lose everything, you start realizing what really mattered. I nodded slowly. Well, now you know. She looked up at me again, something almost hopeful in her expression. Do you think we could? No, I said before she could even finish the sentence. Her face fell. Right, she whispered. I picked up my drink, turning back to my friends. Take care of yourself. And with that I walked away, leaving her standing there, just like she had once left me. Except this time I wasn't the one losing anything. I had already won. I didn't look back. Not once. As I walked away I could feel her eyes on me, but I didn't care. Whatever hope she had left that we could somehow fix what she had destroyed had just been shattered. And I wasn't going to be the one picking up the pieces. She had done that to herself. That night I sat at home, staring out at the city lights, feeling nothing but peace. It was strange, really. Months ago, I had imagined this moment so many times, her realizing what she had lost, coming back with apologies and regret, hoping to fix what was already beyond repair. And I had wondered if, in that moment, I would feel victorious. Vindicated. Like I had truly won. But the truth was, I had stopped caring long before she had even reached out. The moment I closed that door on her, the moment I shut off the part of me that had spent years trying to hold together something that had been falling apart from the start, I had already won. She was nothing more than a distant memory now. A cautionary tale. The days turned into weeks and life moved on. I focused on my career, reconnected with friends, and slowly started rebuilding the life I had almost lost because of her. And it was a damn good life. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't living in the shadow of someone else's expectations. I wasn't being used, manipulated, or treated like a safety net. I was just free. But life has a funny way of circling back, no matter how much you think you've left something behind. It was a rainy evening when I got the next unexpected call. My phone buzzed, and when I glanced at the screen, I saw a familiar name. Not hers. Her mother's. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello? There was a pause on the other end, then a weary sigh. I wasn't sure if you'd pick up. Neither was I admitted. She was quiet for a moment before finally speaking. She's not doing well. I didn't say anything. She lost her job a few weeks ago, she continued. Apparently, she got into some kind of argument with her boss and walked out. She thought she could find something better, but I could already guess where this was going. She's been struggling to pay rent. Her credit's shot. And now she's reached out to us asking for help. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. And? There was another pause. And we told her no. That caught me off guard. Really? She lied to us, her mother said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. She manipulated us, just like she manipulated you. She spent so much time thinking she was smarter than everyone, thinking she could play the system. And now she's run out of people to fool. I didn't respond. I know you don't owe her anything, she continued. I know she doesn't deserve anything from you. But I also know that, once upon a time, you loved her. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, then opened them again. That was a long time ago. I know. A heavy sigh. She asked me to call you. She wouldn't do it herself, pride, I guess. But she's desperate. I could already see where this was going. She wants money. She wants a place to stay, her mother corrected. She thinks maybe you'll let her come back, at least until she gets back on her feet. A slow, bitter laugh escaped me. You're kidding, right? I told her it was a long shot, she admitted. But I had to ask. I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. Let me make this easy for both of us. The answer is no. She let out another sigh, but this time I could hear a trace of relief in it. I figured as much. I needed to hear you say it. There was a long pause before she spoke again, softer this time. I'm sorry for everything she did to you. I nodded to myself. So am I. And with that, we said our goodbyes, and I hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, letting the weight of it all settle in. She had burned every bridge. She had played her game so well that she had finally outplayed herself. And now she had nothing left. I had thought that maybe one day she would find a way to move on, to rebuild. But now I wasn't so sure. Some people never learn. Some people never change. That night I blocked her mother's number too. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I was done. Truly, finally done. And for the first time in years I knew, without a doubt, that I had made the right choice. Because while she was still trapped in the ruins of her own making, I was already miles ahead, walking toward a future that had nothing to do with her. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.